Hello, and you're listening to Your Majesty's Secret Podcast. I like my podcast shaken, not stirred. Only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network. If you'd like to check out more shows, go to foureyedradio.com.
Hey listeners, Eric here, also known as Trekkie B47, from the Starfleet Escape Podcast and the Ranger Command Power Hour. The more phenomenal episode you're about to listen to is brought to you by Raven Designs, illustration and design that fit your personality. For samples and inquiries, visit ravencruise.com.
Bond. James Bond. Shaken, not stirred.
Utter one more syllable and I'll have you killed.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
For your eyes only, darling.
I never joke about my web 007.
For England, James?
Come in, Univex. James Bond here.
Am I going to have a problem with you, Bond?
Allow me to introduce myself.
You're that secret agent! That English secret agent from England!
No, you're cleverer than you look.
Still better than looking cleverer than you are.
My God, what's Bond doing?
I think he's attempting re-entry, sir.
007 reporting for duty.
Hello, the name's Berkeley, Ziggy Berkeley, from Cinema on the Rocks, and with me is Eric Dewey from Socially Awkward Studios, and you are listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network. That's right, this is the show where we talk about bondage, James Bondage, 007 Bondage, and today we're going to be talking about the famous 007 opening credit sequences. Yes, we're a couple of days late, but neither bad internet connections nor illness can keep us away from our audiences for long.
Yeah, we do apologize to any of you who are looking for this episode to drop a couple of days ago. If you're listening after the fact, weeks later, months later, then you have no idea that this episode was late. But for those of you who do patiently wait for our episodes to drop every other Monday, we are sorry. Life happens sometimes, unfortunately, and that's what we got caught up in this time around.
Indeed. And speaking of people who are listening in a timely fashion, you still have time to enter our new contest. Yes, it is our Holiday Returns contest. You have until the end of the day in whatever time zone you live in. That is how generous we're going to be. So the end of the day in whatever time zone you live in on Thursday, November 27th, 2014, that's the end of the day, United States Thanksgiving Day, to enter our Holiday Returns contest. And as you may remember, or for those of you who are just picking up, all you need to do is think about a James Bond movie, any James Bond movie, and pick one thing from the movie you'd like to do differently, but it can only be one thing. You can't do, well, Die Another Day completely sucked, so let's rewrite it. I mean, as much as we may agree with you, that's too much. However, if you wanted to say something like, Jinx sucked, and so we needed to rewrite her, that's okay. So that kind of thing, you can see all of our rules on our webpage. That is hermajestyspod.com/contest.
Yep.
Gives you full contest rules and a convenient entry form for you to enter right from there. That is one of the only two ways that you can officially enter. And if you enter the contest and your answer qualifies, whether or not we end up reading it on the show, just the fact that you entered with a qualifying entry puts you in a random drawing for our Holiday Returns prize pack. Eric, tell them some of the things they could win.
Some of the things you can win from our wonderful Holiday Returns prize pack are a deck of James Bond 50th anniversary playing cards. Really, really cool looking. As a person who enjoys playing poker and other card games, I'm really kind of stoked about that one. That's something that I would like to have for myself. It also includes the real prize that I wanted to keep just for myself. And unfortunately, the second we got the first entry, I knew, dang it, I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to get to keep this because we've got entries. And that is a Hot Wheels replica of the Goldfinger DB5. It is just simply awesome. Hot Wheels and James Bond combined, how can you go wrong? And there could be some other things tossed in there as well. So just know you're getting some cool stuff, and it doesn't cost you a dime to enter. It's not a paid prize. We're not going to spam you or anything like that. All of your personal information is kept private and confidential only for the use of this contest, for the actual entry and the drawing, and of course for the sending out of a prize if you win. We're not going to sell your information. We're not going to give it to anybody else. That's it.
Indeed. And we have gotten some great entries so far, some answers that hadn't thought of, and some that caused us some pretty good laughs already. But we want more answers. So, all of you people out there who haven't answered the contest yet, go ahead and enter. Yes, you, out there in Europe, Tile, I am talking to you. I haven't seen an entry from you yet.
What's
Ryan, out in Minneapolis, I haven't seen an entry from you yet. People we know are loyal listeners to the show. And yes, what about you? You right there. Yeah,
Ooh,
that's you.
Oh, not me, but him.
No, not
him,
not
that
you.
guy.
That person.
Oh.
Yes, that person right there needs to enter.
Yeah,
so
enter.
Come on.
Do it.
Yes, again, you have until the end of the day, November the 27th, 2014. That's end of the day, American Thanksgiving, to enter our holiday returns contest. And we will be drawing the winning entry during the time that we record our holiday returns episode, which will be sometime in December. And that episode will air on January the 5th, 2015. It will be our first episode of the new year.
Ooh. We'll have party hats and noisemakers and, probably not, but maybe, if there's any left over from the festivities.
Indeed. You never can tell. But before we get on to this episode, there is a segue that I found rather interesting. That's an offshoot of what one of our prizes actually is, and that is the Aston Martin DB5.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you may know, there is a lucky gentleman in Ohio who happens to own one of the original Goldfinger DB5s. It was the backup car. However, the one that Sean Connery actually drove himself during Goldfinger, do you know what happened to it?
I do not.
It was stolen. Yes. Back in the day, I believe it was the early 80s, a Florida real estate developer bought the car and he put it on public display. He kept it for himself. He'd drive it around, but he would take it to charity shows and that sort of thing. And they left it parked at a secure airplane hangar in Florida. Until one day, I found this out while I was convalescing, being completely sick for the past week, by the way. Until one day, somebody broke into the hangar and didn't even start the car or throw it in neutral. They dragged it to an airplane and flew off. And no one has seen the car since.
Wow. That takes some huevos there to just drag a car into an airplane, fly off with it, and then never show it to anyone ever. Like, how do you have that car for that long? And like, that's not most of the time you see cars get stolen and they are pieced out. That's why you never see them again. They sell off all the individual parts. I don't think you are going to do that with this one.
No, the value of this car is in exactly what it is. And it was valued at the time at $4 million. Who the hell knows now?
Yeah. Now the question is, how do you move? Like, there's fences and things for stolen property that can be sold and stuff, but something that's so unique and so one of a kind, I don't see how you could ever sell the thing. I mean,
unless you just have it in the basement of your volcano fort.
Yeah, there you go. So that Bond's not going to get me with this car, at least. Might get you with the Vanish, though. Oh, no, we're not doing
that. No. Oh, bad, Eric. Bad.
We are giving a valid example of a answer to our Holiday Returns contest question, though. If you wanted to see the Vanish not be so lame, that could be your answer.
Indeed.
All right. So,
and as a public service announcement, if you happen to know where the James Bond car is, the Aston Martin DB5 from Goldfinger, they are offering a $10,000 reward. Go to losthistory.com and you can give them your
surprised that the reward is that low. I guess just for information that may lead to the restoration or the recapture, if you will, the recovery. That's the word I was looking for.
Well, at the time the car was stolen, the owner put out a $100,000 reward, but the insurance company always suspected him of insurance fraud, but they could never prove it.
Oh, how much did he have it insured for?
It was insured for 80% of the value, so they paid out, I think it was $3.2 million.
Wow. Okay. Well, if you're tired of going around showing off your car and you just want quick cash out without having to actually sell it, and you still be able to keep it in a basement somewhere, that might explain why it's never popped up again. Because he's like, well, I just got it in my basement.
Or he could be completely innocent till proven guilty. So, but I just thought that was an interesting tidbit to pick up while convalescing.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, if you have information, go ahead and send it to me at eric@4eyeradio.com. I will make sure it gets to the right people. I'm offering no reward because I have no reward to give. However, I will be eternally grateful. I'll give you a shout out on the show.
He may even give you a ride in the car.
There you go. All right. Well, this episode is not just about the DB5, although we might eventually have to have an episode just about that one car because it's so awesome. This episode is about the title sequences. And, of course, as we like to do, we've got a list. We have ranked the title sequences of all 24 Bond movies, our standard 24 list, the 23 Eon Productions, and Never Say Never Again. And I think it's going to be very interesting. As we always say, we have not seen each other's lists prior to the recording of the episode. So we have no idea how we've ranked everything.
And just to show you how much we haven't seen each other's lists, apparently Eric missed the part in the show notes where we're skipping Never Say Never Again because there doesn't actually have a real opening title sequence.
Okay, well then my prior prediction of us having the same bottom spot may not be accurate any longer. Because I have a feeling that my number 23 spot is not going to be your bottom spot. But, all right, well, hey, so shocking news already. So I guess we're just doing the 23 Eon films then. Hey, I would usually prefer to leave Never Say Never Again out altogether. So the fact that I included it when it wasn't, it's kind of amusing.
It is pretty amusing, actually. Now, one thing, as we get into this, nowadays, the idea of the long-running opening credit sequence that has some artistic value to it other than just, names going across the screen as you see some kind of useless landscape. Oh, like they did at the start of Never Say Never Again.
There are also some clips of what we were going to see in the movie in there as well. Don't forget that. Near the end.
But
didn't make it any better.
No. But that sort of thing, of course, it's considered a novelty nowadays. Very few movies have that, at least to the extent that James Bond movies do.
Right.
At this point, the main thing you're usually going to get is the lead actors' names, the writer, the producer, the director, and that's it. If you're going to have anything of an artistic title sequence at all. In fact, some movies have completely gotten rid of the title sequence, or the title doesn't show up until a third of the way through. I'm thinking of films like, say, the Friday the 13th remake, where the title sequence doesn't show up until 20-odd minutes in.
You're like, that's what I'm watching.
And then there are some where there is none. There just isn't one. Right. The title doesn't show up until the end of the movie. I'm looking at you, John Carter.
And some movies can get away with it. If it jumps right in to significant storytelling and action or something to that effect where you don't feel you miss it, then okay. But I think it's a staple of a Bond movie. And even I'm glad that they kept it even in the new reboot franchise, of the reboot of the franchise. I'm glad they kept that part alive because we really do enjoy the title sequences. In some cases, they can be better than the movie itself, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But
indeed, and the thing is, it used to be that, unlike now, where you have about 10 minutes of credits that are absolutely scrutinized by every union in Hollywood that run at the end of every film. Like, if you see a movie that is listed at 90 minutes, that's including the credits. So it really runs about 78.
Yeah.
So, but before, back in the early days of Hollywood, all of the credits were at the beginning, just like you see in the Bond films. And I mean all of the credits. Now, of course, at that point, unions weren't the big powerhouse that they are now. And so you would only get exactly what I said before. You would get the cast you would get the director, you would get the producers, the writer, occasionally the person who wrote the score, and maybe one or two other people, and that was the entire credits for the film, always at the beginning, and then at the very end, you would either just get the end, fade, or cut, or you would get a good cast is worth repeating, and that was it. However, as time moved on, the opening credits died a very sudden death. And do you know what film they died that sudden death for, Eric?
I do not. I'm going to take a guess and say, give me a year range.
70s.
70s, okay. I know nothing about 70s films, so I'm not going to take a guess. Never mind.
The film that did this, and this actually got its director in trouble, was Star Wars.
Oh, okay. Now there's a 70s movie I know, so...
But that was the movie that really broke the mold and did not put the major credits until the end.
And you know what? I'm kind of glad for it, because that movie, again, like I said, if you have something that's striking to begin with, you don't need the credits. You want to get right into the story. And Star Wars definitely fits the bill for that, so I'm okay with that.
So that's one of the many ways that Star Wars was the film that changed everything. That's part of the everything it changed. Oh. And after that point, a lot of the larger blockbuster, quote-unquote, Hollywood films started going a similar route, right, until that became the most commonplace way to go. And so the fact that the James Bond series kept to its traditions basically became an artifact. That's something special, and that's something worth recognizing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, which is why we're doing this list and giving credit where credit is due, so to speak. No pun really intended.
Yeah, and most of that credit for a lot of time, person's name will come up a lot, is Mr. Maurice Binder, who did all of the opening credit sequences up through the end of the Dalton era, except for, yes, he also did Dr. No, so yeah, everything. Okay. So it's there's a lot of history here, but we're going to start our list now. Again, Never Say Never Again doesn't count because in order to avoid the appearance of being an Eon film as part of the settlement of the lawsuit that Kevin McClory won, he could not repeat the gun barrel or opening credit style sequence. Therefore, it just had a standard regular credit roll. Mm-hmm. So you just had the silly landscape going into the opening scene of the film.
Yeah, there were a few little clips here and there. It was mostly just a tracking shot with credits, and then there was a few like little clips of things that you were going to see in the movie, which actually made it worse. If they'd just stuck with the tracking shot, it would have been better. Just so you know, when I did my classifications on my spreadsheet, like I do, I gave each title sequence a possible score of 40 out of various categories. I won't go into all of them, but they had a possibility of getting up to 40 points. Never Say Never Again received 1 point out of 40. So, it would have been dead last on my list had it been on the list, but we're going to say that it's not on my list. So, why don't we start?
And I, of course, did not do a mathematical spreadsheet. I only used Excel because it is graph paper.
Yes, graph paper is nice. So then, why don't we jump right into number 23 on the list? I would like to, since you seem to think that we might have the same bottom one, not counting Never Say Never Again, so I'm very curious to hear what your number 23 is.
For me, number 23 was the no-brainer of the list. Well, actually, there were a couple of no-brainers on the list, but this was the no-brainer that really had no brain.
Uh-oh.
On the one hand, I understand the logic behind it, but it's crappy logic, and it just sets you up for a horrible movie.
Uh-oh.
Just as the pre-title sequence did as well. And I am, of course, talking about On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Okay. For a moment, I thought we were talking that I was going to severely question your judgment.
If you question my judgment on this one, I'm going to question yours.
I'm giving you a slightly raised eyebrow. That is it. Not really too much judgment questioning going on over here. For a second, I thought you were going to a different extreme, and I was like, whoa, we're going to be questioning each other's judgment real early. But no, I can see that. I did think there were some that I enjoyed less, so we'll talk about that. But we won't be long before talking about On Her Majesty's Secret Service's title sequence again.
Yeah, for me, basically what it is it has almost nothing to do with the movie you're about to watch. Yep. All it's saying is, hey, remember there were other Bond movies and they were really good, and we want to remind you of that. while you're experiencing this, so you can kind of associate this with that and maybe get some of Sean Connery's good karma onto this used car salesman.
Yeah.
Because basically what it is you have, it starts out looking like it might be all right, because you got these silhouetted girls looking like British Beefeater guards. That's what they call the guards in the fun hats with the bayonets outside the palaces, by the way. And then they're kneeling next to this object that at first looks like a martini glass, and you realize, no, it's an hourglass, through which they're going through still shots of the movies that came before. Oh, God, this sucks. So my vote for the bottom of the list on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Okay. For my number 23, the bottom of my list, I almost felt bad when this one ended up on the bottom of my list. But it was significantly at the bottom of my list based on everything else. Basically, I went, yes, I did have categories and stuff, but pretty much all of them came down to how much I enjoyed it and how much it put me in the mood to watch the rest of the movie. And if it didn't put me in the mood to watch the rest of the movie, if it didn't feel... if it felt out of place to me or weird and jumping around, then it lost points. And this one, I tried very hard to move this up on my list because I felt that it deserved a higher place on the list, but I just couldn't do it. There were too many others that I enjoyed watching more. And so for me, the bottom of my list is actually the one that started it all. That is Dr. No. I did not enjoy that opening title sequence. It jumped around. The music was weird. Nothing clicked for me. It seemed like it was cobbled together almost to me. And the movie is so much better than that title sequence. I couldn't give it any more points. So I know my judgment is probably going to be questioned here, but that is where I put it.
It is being questioned just a bit.
I really, I saw it at the bottom of my list, and I redid my list a couple of times, and it still ended up on the bottom, and I even rewatched most of the title sequences again today. I watched some of all of the title sequences again today, as a matter of fact. And some of them I watched the whole thing. And I still couldn't find justification to move this up. It jumped around. It was choppy. It didn't seem to fit. The only time where it started to fit the movie was at the very end when it started leading into the Three Blind Mice. But that was more the beginning of the movie than it was the title sequence. So I was kind of like, can't really give it too many points for that. And then even then it jumped around after that before going back to it. So I was like, nope, can't do it. So there you have it. Judgment questioned already at the very bottom of the list.
And you're going to feel even more vindicated when I describe how I feel about that later.
Uh-oh.
So with that in mind, how do you feel about number 22, sir?
For me, number 22 was one that, while I liked the visualization of it, and I understand, again, you'll see a trend here. Most of the older movies are closer to the bottom of my list, and, some of the newer movies did make it towards the top, and some of that is just... It can be attributed to graphics. Again, I pointed out how much I enjoyed watching them. And for me, the better the graphics, the more I'm going to enjoy watching it. So while I didn't specifically give points for graphic effects, knowing that, hey, the ones made in the 60s and 70s aren't going to have as good effects as the ones made in the 2000s. And that's fine. But
Closet Michael Bay disciple.
What's that?
Closet Michael Bay disciple.
I want more explosions, and I want some lens flares, and this is horrible. No lens flares, no explosions. How am I supposed to watch this movie? No, for me, this one, while I appreciated what they were doing, it just didn't click for me. It was boring to watch, and the novelty that I first felt when I first started up, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then the novelty of that wore off very, very quickly for me. And that is the one that I have in my notes, all volcano, all the time. You only live twice. For me, it was just too much volcano, not enough anything else.
I question your judgment, sir.
This is going to be a fun episode, I think. So then, what do you have at your number 22 spot?
At my number 22 spot. Now, I try not to take the song into consideration at all, if I can, because that's its own episode. It was the first list episode we ever did. It's a list episode we may end up doing again.
Yep.
Who knows? But, so I try not to take it into account. Mm-hmm. That said, there are, let's just say that it's the songs that made it at the bottom of that list don't make it very far on this one.
even though you're not ranking the songs, I found myself doing the same thing. I did not use the song as a category at all because I know we already did that. This is a separate thing. However, it does affect your enjoyment of the sequence. If the song
it's a
really
music
sucks,
video.
It's going to drag down your experience. So I totally don't fault you for letting that creep in, even though it may not have been an official category in your head.
Yeah, because in the end, it is a music video you're watching.
Yeah,
so it does come into it. That said, even if the song was not such utter, ridiculous, god-awful club crap, the opening sequence for Die Another Day is just so horrible, just like the rest of the movie, just like the sequence that came before, just like the crap that comes after, even though I have a feeling it ranked higher on Eric's list just because I'm going to guess one of his categories somehow involved the credit sequence having to do with the story itself.
Well, it did not have a specific category. I will tell you that I severely question your judgment, and when we talk about this title sequence again, you're going to severely question mine. This is going to be a fun episode. Already, we're way different on quite a bit. But no, I get what you're saying, but I'll give my thoughts on that one a lot later in this episode.
Basically, to me, it's a mess. It's just a complete mess. It combines real torture sequences, which if it had just stuck with that, would have been all right. But then you have bad CGI. And how do we know it was CGI and not clever camera work? Because the torturer turns into an effing scorpion. Come on.
Scorpions
really?
Are cool, man.
Is this
Just
Mortal
saying.
Kombat?
Although I will say that the one thing I will say before we get to it on my list is they were using those big black scorpions, which everybody knows are not that venomous. So, come on, guys, use the little, at least, in future Bond movies when they had Bond and a scorpion, they used a scorpion that could actually pick him up. You know what I'm saying? Those black scorpions, they'll hurt, but they won't kill you.
But it's just a bad poser club freak show. Just like the song, just like the movie. I just could not dig it at all. It just left a bad taste in my mouth. So at my number 22, Die Another Day.
All right. Well, like I said, I will simply question your judgment, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, a lot later in this episode.
Yike.
So I guess that brings us to number 21, the drinking song, or the drinking title sequence, so to speak.
I don't think I have enough to drink now, but...
No, I only had one beer, and I'm like, geez, I might need more. So for me, for number 21, this is another one where the biggest issue I had with this title sequence is that I did not feel a connection with the rest of the film. This is a film that has ranked very highly on both of our lists, and a film that I quite enjoy and will go back to and watch repeatedly. And we'll probably actually, I think I'm due to watch this again probably sometime in the next few weeks, as a matter of fact, just for funsies. But the title sequence for me didn't do anything. We've got weird gymnast silhouettes, which I don't understand why they exist in this. And you've got a song that makes me want to go to bed. So for me, number 21...
I bet I know what it is.
...is Moonraker. Again, I'm not trying to rank the song in here, but when I'm watching the title sequence to a Bond movie, I'm not trying to go to bed. I'm not trying to be put to sleep. And that Moonraker song is just a sleepy song. And then the sequence has nothing going for it for me that keeps me entertained past the song. I can't get past the song because there's nothing going on that I feel any connection to. So that's why it ended up so far down on the list, even though great movie. Not knocking the movie in any way, shape, or form. Number 21, title sequence, Moonraker.
Somehow, I think I analyzed the work of Maurice Binder a little more than you have. I'm just going to call that right here.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to, even though we're not going to talk about this again for a while, I'm not going to question your judgment.
Okay.
Because the reason we're not going to talk about that for a while is there are still so many that bother me.
Okay.
So...
All right.
That one, well, we'll get to it, but there are some others that bother me. So.
All right. So, what do you have at number 21 then?
At my number 21, and it kind of surprised me at first, because when I originally thought of this, I mean, the song doesn't really do a whole lot for me, but I don't remember hating on this title sequence when I first saw the movie or any of the subsequent times. But when I watched all of the title sequences several times in order to prep for this episode, I realized what a freaking mess this is. It's just a sellout. Remember when we talked about the posters, and one of the things that both of us agreed we didn't like was collage vomit?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that is the opening credit sequence for License to Kill. It's got a bunch of photographic images. It has a camera as its centerpiece, and I still can't figure out why.
I was wondering about that myself. Now, I will tell you that one ranked higher on my list, but I do have notes on that one that are kind of like, wait, what?
And it's a cut-off version of the song. Now, granted, with a lot of these opening title sequences, the version of the song is not the version that you hear on the soundtrack or on the radio edit or anything like that, but the edit on this one is really bad. Like, you can tell exactly where they spliced.
Yeah.
And that's never a good thing. And it's just so random. And as you were saying before, it doesn't give me a connection to this film at all in any way, shape, or form. So, now, granted, this is the last work of Maurice Binder. After that, he did not do the sequences anymore. Unfortunately, he passed on, but his best work was not his last. So at my number 21, License to Kill for being collage vomit.
All right. I won't question your judgment. Like I said, mine, I do have it a bit higher on the list, but I have my reasons, and we'll get to that when we get there. So how about number 20?
At number 20, keeping on a theme of a certain 5-letter word, I only have a 3-word note for this. I can ramble on a little more, of course, because, hey, that's what I do. Bet the audience didn't notice. But it is another very modern film, though not one that I rank as highly anyway, and that is The World Is Not Enough, for which I describe the title sequence in the 3 words, oily mess, ugly. Because all it is oil. Nothing but flippin' oil. Everything is oil.
Yeah.
I get the theme. I understand. I even get how it ties into the film. Mm-hmm. And I'll even admit to a personal prejudice here. I hate the look of oil sheen. I hate that color. That kind of pearlescent, that reddish, greenish over black. It makes me think of vomit.
Right.
And so I don't even want to look at the screen when this one's on. It just makes me want to puke. Wow. So that's why number 20 for me, The World Is Not Enough, because oily mess, ugly.
I also have oil in my notes for that one. However, I will talk about that a bit later in the episode. Now, I will say that starting here at number 20 for me, it starts to get really, really close. It really starts with pretty much number 2. Because, again, we always say this, but I think it bears repeating. We love these movies. We wouldn't be doing this show if we hated all these movies. So when we do these lists, a lot of times, there's only a couple that we really don't like, and then the rest of them are just ranking the good stuff. And that's kind of how I felt about this as well, because I love these title sequences. I love the fact that they exist. I love them in general. Yes, there's some I like better than others, and so I can rank them in these lists, but a lot of times they're very, very close. And I would say that basically from my number 21 up to my number 6 are all very, very close. I was able to rank them, but they could move around. They could be fluid very easily if I watched them again or in a different order, perhaps. I could very easily.
As long as that fluid isn't oil.
So for me, this one at number 20 is one that I even have in my notes that I thought it was kind of cool, and I enjoyed watching it. However, I just enjoyed some of these other ones more. So for me at number 20 came in one that I'm having a feeling based on your current projections, based on my current projections in here, that I'm having a feeling that this one's going to rank much higher on yours. I did like this. I liked the effect. I liked what they were doing. I just think it was done better later on. I think it was something that was improved upon, so it got a little bit lower on my list. But for me, number 20 was the title sequence of From Russia with Love. We got cool projection on dancing girls. I even put it ooh la la in my notes. But there were some that I liked more than that. But it's still good. I'm not knocking it. All right.
Well, I am just so scandalized by the fact that you have From Russia with Love at number 20 when I have it as high as number 19.
Oh, no. Okay, then. All right. Yeah, I just felt it was a cool effect, and I liked, something new at the time, but it didn't really have a strong connection to the film for me. So is that how you felt about it as well?
For me, the way I looked at it was, it's still Maurice Binder and Cubby Broccoli trying to figure out exactly how they want the credit sequences to look. They're still getting their groove together, and they wouldn't get it together for a few movies. They're experimenting, and this is the next step in the experiment. This is the first one that comes close to what they would be doing later. And like you said, it's novel or naval, depending on how you want to look at it, since it's shown on a belly dancer. You have a jazz version of the theme instead of the admittedly awful crooning of Robert Monroe. But of all of the classic sequences, to me, it's also the most boring. Like you said, I don't hate on it. It's just there are so many that I like better. So I agree with your reasoning.
All right, this could end up being the closest to a match on our list that we have thus far. So, all right, my 20, your 19. So
what's your 19, sir?
So for me, my 19 is another one where I actually really enjoy the song, but again, just the song wasn't as good as a classification on this list. So while I enjoyed the song, it wasn't enough to make me fully get into the title sequence. And this is a movie that I hold a lot of love for. I've said it time and again that even though it's not my favorite movie, it is one that I hold a lot of personal love for, because it was the first Bond movie I ever saw, and that of course is For Your Eyes Only. I
questioned your judgment, sir.
I love the opening sequence coming in to the title sequence, but then once the title sequence starts, I kind of check out for a couple of minutes before the movie begins. It doesn't do it for me. I can't. It's not, again, I'm not hating on it. Again, these ones on my list are very, very close together. But for me, it just didn't seem to click with the rest of the movie. And that could be because the opening sequence also was completely separate from the movie. While it was fun, it wasn't the best. We talked about that last episode. It was kind of a fun little thing by itself, but it shouldn't have been an opening sequence. And that's kind of how I feel about the title sequence as well. I don't feel that it prepared me for the movie I'm about to see. I felt it was just kind of a music video for a decent song, but it didn't scream Bond to me, and so that's why I felt the number 19 on my list.
I question your judgment, sir.
Uh-oh.
So what do you have at number 18?
So moving on to number 18 is one that you already mentioned. It's the one that you thought would be the very, very bottom of my list. This one made it just a little bit higher because even though I do feel, as you do, that the placement of old movie stills or footage or whatever they had going on was completely uncalled for, completely stupid, I still felt that the title sequence, maybe it was because I felt the title sequence maybe I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the actual movie. Maybe that's why it rose up on my list. I don't know.
You put it ahead For Your Eyes Only. What the hell is wrong with you?
So if you're not following along closely, that would place my number 18 being on Her Majesty's Secret Service. I have in my notes here that there was some really cool silhouette action, but bad placement of old movie footage, because that was completely unnecessary. Yeah, again, it was screaming, please, please, please associate us with that, even though what you're about to see does not measure up. But for me, like I said, maybe it's just because I enjoyed the title sequence more than I enjoyed the actual movie. It raised it up a little bit in my mind. Just judging the title sequence by itself got it all the way up to number 18. Not that that's extremely high on the list, but that's where it ended up. So while my judgment is being severely questioned, what do you have at number 18?
Number 18 is proof that, I paid attention to something other than the song, because if I only paid attention to the song, it would be the only one that could have been worse than what I had at number 23, even though everyone else in the room seemed to really like it, including our own Mr. Matt Renfro, who is the host of the Fro Show on the 4-Eyed Radio Network and our resident music guy. But for me, the theme music for Quantum of Solace still sounds like it belongs in a ghetto strip club, and has nothing to do at all with 007. What the hell? It's just, to me, that is the most random music they've ever used for a James Bond movie. Now, while this is playing, we see Daniel Craig walking through a desert.
A lot of sand.
And walking through a desert.
And sometimes he shoots.
And a desert.
But sometimes he shoots in the desert.
He
he's
does.
Not just walking. Sometimes he shoots things.
It feels like he's doing it for 40 years. And so The graphics are good enough. So yes, I'll go with the Michael Bay angle of Eric for just a moment to make it a little more interesting than what I've already listed before. But overall, this is pretty dull stuff with a really crappy song behind it. Now that said, this is the last one on my list where it's a negative over everything else, but nevertheless, it is a negative over everything else. Mm-hmm. And it was really close between this and From Russia with Love. In fact, I flip-flopped these on my list several times. Ask me again in about an hour, and I might flip them again. Who knows? But at the moment, my number 18 is Quantum of Solace.
I don't know if I should question your judgment or simply look at you sideways, but either way, it will be a little while before we discuss Quantum of Solace's title sequence again in this particular episode. Not as long as the other one, where I severely questioned your judgment and you will severely question mine. But I will say that I enjoyed it quite a bit more than you evidently did. And I'll explain my reasons when we get there on my list.
Fair enough.
So I believe that brings us to number 17 on both of our lists. Do you want to go, or is it my turn? I don't even know. I'm not even keeping track.
For number 17, now this is one where, for me, this is where it starts to get to be close in terms of, for the next several are close together to each other. And again, this is where they're finding their way. They're still figuring it out, but they haven't quite hit that groove yet of what the Bond title sequence is going to be.
Okay.
But great song behind it and iconic imagery in front of it. You have the scenes from the movie shown over the body of a gold-painted girl who nevertheless is still clothed. Sigh. So at number 17, I have Goldfinger.
Can't question your judgment too much. I do have it a few spaces higher, but not dramatically. So, yeah, it was a fun one. Again, we had the projection thing again, like we had on From Russia with Love, but this time we had it on the Gold Girls. So that was cool, and I think it's a much better song as well. I enjoyed the song much better, and I think it was more fitting because, well, this song is so descriptive of what you're going to see in the movie. So it's one of those songs where it really brings you in and it makes you want to watch. So I can see why it made it there on your list, and like I said, I've got it just a few spots higher, so we'll talk about it again in a few moments.
All right. So what do you have at 17, sir?
So for number 17 for me is one that may have gotten, it could have easily been 3, 4, maybe more spots higher than this, if it wasn't for just the randomness of the trampoline people. Why trampoline people? Why? Those are my notes. I said, why trampoline people? I don't get it. I don't understand why I'm seeing silhouettes of people jumping on trampolines. It makes no sense.
Because you're not
French. Me completely out of the film. Like, I'm sitting there for pretty much the entire sequence. They're done. They're gone. The trampoline people are gone, but I'm still sitting there going, but why were they there? And
you're never going to watch Chinese acrobats or Cirque du Soleil, are you?
If I'm there to see trampoline people, then okay, let's see some trampoline people. If I'm there to see a James Bond movie, don't show me trampoline people. And so for me, the opening sequence to The Spy Who Loved Me, while good, it lost some points because of those damn trampoline people. And so that made it number 17 on my list.
I'm just picturing Ian Fleming's The Damn Trampoline People.
James Bond 007 in Those Damn Trampoline People.
Okay, so Eric doesn't really understand interpretive dance. Okay, so
you can dance anywhere but on a trampoline, I'll be fine.
So let's dance on up to your next one. What do you have at number 16?
For number 16 is one that I actually could easily be tied with the previous one, honestly. It's the real reason that it's one step higher is
there's no trampoline people, right?
Trampoline people. I felt this one was extremely fitting for the title of the film, extremely fitting for the theme of the film, even to the point of being over-the-top extreme, which is why it lost some places. It could have been higher than this if it wasn't for the fact that I thought it was kind of overkill about halfway through. I was like, okay, yes, I get it. Diamonds are a theme in a movie called Diamonds Are Forever. I get it. I understand. You can show me something else now. Nope, more diamonds. Okay, I get it. Yes, diamonds. Lots of diamonds. They're forever. Gotcha. Fun sequence. Very cool. But the diamond overkill is the only thing that pushed it down to the mid-range on my list. So for me, number 16 is Diamonds Are Forever.
I'm not going to question your judgment. We'll be talking about that shortly.
All right. So I believe that puts us at your number 16 spot.
It does. And my number 16 spot, again, not one of my favorite songs, but in terms of going through the motions of what the prototypical James Bond title sequence was going to be for a while, we've got it now, except we have something that I thought was really obvious that rather bothered me. And I know there are lots of people who are going to think, yeah, you dog. And while I'm not going to deny that, hey, I appreciate such things, the fact is, artistically, I do think that it does detract once you obviously start censoring. And so for me, number 16, the title sequence from The Man with the Golden Gun. It does feature the gun, or at least a golden gun.
Yes.
It's not the gun in the title sequence. And it's got the standard Maurice Binder silhouette dancing. It's got some implied nudes going through the water, but they're only implied. And the nudes that you do see are obviously censored. So real nudity does not happen inside of this sequence. And it's so blatant to me that censorship is going on that it knocked it down a few places.
Mm-hmm. I can understand that. I will admit that I did not detract points in my scale or anything for that particular thing, but I did notice it as well. Other title sequences did it better, where you could tell it's like, okay, hey, it's pretty obvious that whoever was doing that silhouette was naked, but because it's just a silhouette, it's not actual nudity. Whereas with that one, there were some moments where you could tell where there was some digital manipulation happening after the fact, and that does kind of distract. It
wouldn't be digital at the time, it would be airbrush.
Oh, yeah, but
the first digital manipulation did not occur until Westworld.
One of the few Crichton translations I have not attempted to watch. Because
actually, it was a Crichton original.
So bad. Oh, did he do the screenplay?
Yes.
Oh, well then I might have to... Okay, that one might break the mold then, because Hollywood has a bad habit of turning his great books into horrible movies, with the exception of the first Jurassic Park. Did not enjoy pretty much any of his other the other stuff.
See, I thought 13th Warrior was fun.
It was okay, but Eaters of the Dead was so much better that it made it so obvious that it's like they didn't just change the name; they changed a lot. And it was an okay movie on its own. But anyways, point to the story is I did not take as many points away for that censorship, and we'll talk about that one. Well, we're getting to the midpoint of the list, so I'm not going to say way far away from now. But I will say far enough away from now that I'm giving you a sideways glance. Not lingering, not staring, sideways. Quick sideways glance.
Well, sure, because there's no nudity involved.
Well, if there was, I'd be staring, for sure. So that brings us to number 15, the quinceañera. No? All right. So what do you have at number 15?
At number 15, finally... I have your bottom of the list, Dr. No. And you're going to feel even more like it belongs at the bottom of the list when you hear my last note on it. We've got the funky jazz a go-go and the reggae mom music. They're experimenting. They're trying to figure it out. They're trying to do something mod, because remember, this is the beginning of the 60s, so that era is starting up. And so you've got the circles, and you've got the different version of Monty Norman's James Bond theme song, and then you move on to some calypso, and then you move on to the reggae, and then you move on to the Three Blind Mice. So it's a collage, but it's not collage vomit, because it is a single coherent artistic piece in terms of if you take it as an exploration of a visual style. I looked at it as an art museum exhibit, actually. But the other thing that I saw it as, it's like a prototype iPod ad. If you look at the silhouette people dancing.
Is there a spot below bottom for me? Because it just made the below bottom spot. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like an early Apple ad. That's how I ended up classifying the opening credits sequence for Dr. No. But there are so many that do it better that I have Dr. No solidly at number 15.
All right. I won't question your judgment too much. Like I said, my biggest beef with it was I didn't equate it to an Apple ad, or it would have been instantly number 23. But my biggest issue was that it just jumped around too much. Their attempt to be mod or whatever, it didn't strike me as cohesive at all. So that's why, again, I wanted to rate it higher as being the first. We often give a lot of credit to Dr. No for being the first. And I think sometimes we're even a little lenient with it in comparison to the other films because it was the first. But in this one, I just couldn't do it.
Open pit nuclear reactor.
Yeah, we don't give them any leeway on that one. But yeah, I also didn't give it any leeway for this title sequence because even though, yes, they were just finding their way, they found their way so quickly after this that I couldn't give them credit for it. But I don't question your judgment. I'll give you that one.
So what do you have at number 15, sir?
So for me, number 15 is one that, again, the movie, one of our favorites, one of both of our favorites, yours especially. The title sequence, basically the entire time I watched it, I was just like, wow, 80s. Just 80s.
You could not have done this. You did not put it this low.
I mean, yeah, it had lasers and black lights and just.
Oh, come on,
80s.
Man.
It was as 80s as a thing could be. And that's not necessarily a bad thing on its own, but it took me away from the Bondness of it. It took me the Bondinessocity wasn't there. It was replaced with 80s Necessity. So for me, number 15, A View to a Kill. The title sequence just too 80s. It was too 80s. And I love the 80s. I'm not, normally I would say a thing can't be too 80s, but a Bond title sequence, they found a way to make it just too 80s.
Wow. I have a cheesy cocktail and I'm looking at you funny over it. I question your judgment, sir.
So I have a feeling we'll be talking about that title sequence later in the episode.
Yes.
So then what do you have at number 14?
Number 14, one you've already mentioned, and I completely agree with everything you said about it, actually. And that is Diamonds Are Forever. Just too many diamonds are what make it get as far down as it is, because otherwise it's artistically very interesting. Mm-hmm. And because at first, okay, diamonds make sense. They, like you said, they just kill it and kill it again. But you have the photo girls. You've got the cat. I like the inclusion of the Blofeld cat. It's very cool. And you also have the first visible photographic nude in a James Bond title sequence. I don't mean silhouette nude. I mean photographic nude. So
I have to go rewatch that right now. I'll be back in a few minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
So that's what. So if it weren't for the fact of the diamonds being overkilled, as you said, this probably would have gone a few spots higher. Mm-hmm. But as it stands, number 14 for me is Diamonds Are Forever.
Okay, fair enough. And how about lucky number 13?
For me, lucky number 13 is one you've already mentioned, and that is Moonraker. And it's solidly just there. It's got all of the typical Maurice Binder elements. It's got the fog, it's got some smoke, it's got some silhouette girls, it's got photo girls, no nudes. It's got photographs of the Earth, but I'm thinking, this is James Bond in space, and that's all you could come up with? Yeah. This should have been so much more cosmic, which is why it is stuck at number 13. Mm-hmm. It could easily have flip-flopped with Diamonds Are Forever, except for the overkill on the diamonds. So my number 13 is Moonraker. Okay.
Well, like I say, I can't fault your judgment there. Obviously, it was a little bit lower for me, mostly because it made me want to go to bed. But I completely agree. It's like it had the elements, but combined with the song and not enough of the pop and pizzazz that we see in other ones. And you're right, they could have totally exploited the space angle way more, and instead all we get is one image, basically, of the Earth as seen from space, but it isn't even... They don't even put it against like a black star background. It's more against a blue background, so you're not even really getting that it's in space. You just see that it's the Earth. So they should have screamed, "Hey, look, James Bond in space!" And instead they gave us what we got. Movie was great though. Loved the
Indeed.
movie. James Bond in space.
So what do you have next, sir?
So for me, my number 13 is one that you already mentioned, and in fact, surprisingly enough, we flip-flopped our 13 and 21 spots. So for me, number 13 was one you already mentioned. This one, again, very, very 80s, but it didn't scream 80s into my ears until they bled as much as A View to a Kill did. And this one, I'm going to combo up 13 and 12 because honestly, I felt they were virtually interchangeable, and that is the two Dalton films, License to Kill and The Living Daylights. I enjoyed both of their opening sequences. but I have virtually identical notes on them. The only thing I have on License to Kill that I don't have on Living Daylights is way too much 007. They put the 007 imagery in way too many places. Like the chips being stacked on the, I believe it was a roulette table where they had the 2 stacks of chips next to the 7. So it's like, oh, 007. Oh. No. You don't need it that much. And they kept doing it, like, everywhere. So I was like, if I have to rank these 2 separately, License to Kill will be 13, Living Daylights will be 12. But I felt they were good effects. I felt they were a good mix of things that didn't scream out of place to me. I understand where you were coming from with the collage vomit on there, but for me, I felt that these 2 were solidly in the middle. And that's where I placed them, right there in the middle.
All right. I'm looking at you funny, but all right. In both directions, actually.
Ooh. Sideways and upside down? I don't know what the other direction would be.
Well, see, that's how much you know.
So, since I did my number 12, how about your number 12?
My number 12 is one where you can't question why the silhouette acrobats are there. Because they make sense for this movie. And I, of course, would then obviously have to be referring to Octopussy.
I do have
that
a note
features a circus.
I do have some notes about the silhouettes on Octopussy, although I won't question your judgment because it didn't distract as much as the trampoline people did. Damn trampoline people.
Because the silhouette acrobats, they're characters in the film. I mean, you can watch them, and their acrobatic stuff is important.
Yep.
So, especially, Magda. And then you have the shadowed Maurice Binder nudes, trademark, with a neon Bond. The neon was kind of weird, but I went with it. And there was also a neon octopus.
Mm-hmm. It was laser. That's what I have on my notes. It was like laser projection. The 007 and the...
Yeah, I called it neon just because I know what you're saying. It just gave the feel of a neon sign.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's kind of what they were going for. But, I put in my notes, Zomji lasers.
And that's fair description.
Lasers.
But for me, this is solidly in the middle.
All right. I will say that it's slightly higher for me, but we won't be taking too long before we talk about that one again.
All right. Now for my number 11... The first time I went through the sequences again, I did not think it would make it this high.
Okay.
And then I watched all of them a few times, and this one grew on me while others sank on me. So we have something that's very close to collage vomit overkill, but just stops short of being that. And I was trying to figure out exactly what we were going for, and I came to the conclusion that, well, just as another movie or two were very much their own, that specific decade, like Dr. No is very much the 60s, for example, this one was just its own decade, and that is Tomorrow Never Dies, which features lots of digital stuff. Mm-hmm. Lots of girls covered in circuit boards, mm-hmm. X-ray images, an X-ray of a watch, gun, bullets. Mm-hmm. And the imagery is almost overdone, but not quite. It's very, very 90s, and specifically it's very late 90s. So it fits its time, and it also just fits, if not with exactly what the story is, at least with the psychology mm-hmm. of the story. So for me, number 11, Tomorrow Never Dies.
All right. I will say that one made it higher on my list, obviously, because I haven't mentioned it yet. But I can't question your judgment. And in fact, I agree with most of what you said. You did have some really cool effects. I like the Haxor type of graphics where you had the circuit boards and the computer code and this sort of thing, even though it may not have anything to actually do with the way computers actually work. It was pretty cool. There were some moments when the CGI got a little iffy. And it's just kind of like, ooh, that almost detracts from it. But I'll talk about it a little bit more here in a little bit. But I can't fault you for that placement. I think, we're into the good stuff now. And so I'm kind of surprised any of those post-GoldenEye movies, basically, I'm kind of surprised any of them made it this high on your list.
So what do you have at number 11 yourself?
So for me, number 11, I almost thought you were hinting at this when you said that some of them rose on you and some of them sunk on you. Because this one features a lot of underwater graphics, being that the movie features a lot of underwater action. This is one, again, we're talking about the good stuff here. We're almost into the top 10. This one just barely snuck in under the top 10, and only because, I'll be honest with you, Zombie lasers. But for me, number 11, Thunderball. Very cool silhouette action. I like the way they did it. I like the underwater stuff, and it was definitely better graphics than anything we'd seen up to that point in the actual chronology of the show, of the movies. So I really thought it was well done. I enjoyed it. I thought it fit well with the movie, and so that's my number 11, Thunderball.
I'm a little surprised it didn't make your top 10, but I'm not questioning your judgment, but we will be talking about that later.
All right.
So what do you have at your number 10, sir?
The one that did barely beat out Thunderball, and mostly because I thought the laser effects were really cool, and of course, who doesn't like naked girls? That was Octopussy, your number 12. The one question I did have, the one that brought it all the way down to number 10, this could have been higher. I get the acrobatics. I don't get the ice skaters. Why do we have ice skaters? Ice skaters weren't at the circus. Why? They didn't take me out of the moment as much as the trampoline people, but they still took me out of the moment just enough to bring this. This could have easily been somewhere in the 8 and 7 range, but instead it made it down to number 10 because why ice skaters? But the laser effects were cool. I dug that. So, number 10, Octopussy. And just for good measure, because I love saying it, Octopussy.
And that was a selection from Eric, who will probably never go see a ballet of Dracula.
About what? When you said, ever see a ballet, I'd be like, that's not true. I've been to ballets. Then you said, of Dracula, and that's where you lost me. Because I'd be like, why? Either why vampires or why ballet? They just don't seem to mesh to me.
It's actually a very well-traveled ballet, highly regarded.
I can understand the ice skaters maybe if this was for your eyes only, but in Octopussy, the ice skaters didn't work for me.
Fair enough.
But they weren't trampoline people, at least. Ugh, trampoline people.
It's funny you should say that. Because at my number 10, it is the trampoline people who loved me.
Well, you loved them more than I did, that's for sure.
But not as much as we love chickens. We love chickens.
Well, in this case, we didn't love the chickens. Maybe if they'd have put chickens in the title sequence, it would have made it higher than 18 and 23 on our respective lists.
This is true. However, just because, we had to point that out in case the audience thought we forgot, because we couldn't forget the chickens. But at number 10, The Spy Who Loved Me, because, again, this is the classic Maurice Binder look. The gymnastic silhouettes, I don't mind. You see, I call it interpretive dance, because I think that's a lot of what this is.
But they were on a trampoline.
And I missed that one. What?
But they were on a trampoline. Why were they on trampolines? Why?
And then, of course, you have the topless girls in bikini bottoms, but they're still very obviously topless. You have... And this one I kind of like, Roger Moore's James Bond pushing over silhouettes of a girly Russian army, which I thought was kind of interesting. That's actually the scene. That's actually the moment in there that brought this higher up for me. I liked that. I thought that was I liked that touch.
Right.
Just interpretively, it was cool. And then, of course, you have the romantic poses. It says The Spy Who Loved Me, after all. And whether or not Eric appreciates the trampolines, it's my number 10.
All right. Well, I won't question your judgment too much. I understand. It's just, for me, that those trampoline people just took me out of the moment. And it took me out of the moment for long enough that this sequence was over before I was back in the moment. So it had to be lower on my list. But I don't fault your judgment. And if you enjoy it, then that's why we have two hosts, as we like to say around here.
Indeed it is.
So what about numero 9?
Number 9 is one that you did not like very much.
Okay.
Though you actually liked it better than I probably made you think in terms of how far apart we'd be. And that is The Living Daylights. And this is one where you have the totally 80s stuff, but you've also got I like the choreography with it. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, you have when the lyric "Headlights Fade Away" comes on, the headlights that are shown on the screen turn off. I like that. I like that little synergy there. Mm-hmm. And just for historical purposes, this is the last time that you would actually see a nude in a credit sequence. That would be with the nude woman pointing a gun down into the water. But I like the effect also with the glasses in the sequence, so it just worked for me. So number 9, Living Daylights.
All right. The only thing that really surprised me is how far apart you had License to Kill and Living Daylights. For me, they were so close together that they could almost be interchangeable, but you had them a good quite a bit apart, 12 places apart. Whereas
for me, what it comes down to is choreography. Living Daylights looked choreographed. License to Kill looked random.
Okay. I can understand your reasoning, and I will only look as questioningly at you as I did when you originally told me your number 21 pick.
And what do you have at number 9, sir?
For me, number 9 is one that I'm actually kind of surprised you haven't mentioned yet, which means that it's obviously in your top 9 as well somewhere. And I feared that this one was one that we would be questioning each other's judgment on, because I liked this one even though I almost felt like I shouldn't. You know, I was watching it and I thought there were so many times when I thought, I shouldn't enjoy this as much as I'm enjoying this right now, but
I bet I know what it is.
I love the song. I love the effects. Yes, it was very urban heavy, but you know what? So was the movie, and so it fit, and it worked, and it got you ready for what you're about to see. So for me, number 9, Live and Let Die.
All right. I only question you a little bit.
Like I said, I know you haven't mentioned it yet, so it's got to be somewhere in your top 9. It didn't make it any higher than 9 for me, but again, you know, I love the fire, the fire effects. It was a little cheesy when they, you know, had the girl on fire and then suddenly it was the skull on fire. It's like, if you're trying to show me that she's burnt down to a skull, that doesn't, but it was only a very brief, taking me out of the moment. And of course the song is fantastic. I mean, it's one of the few Bond songs you're going to hear just on a regular radio station on a daily basis. It's a fantastic song, and it's a great video for that song. So you really get a good sense. You get a good combination of a good solid music video in addition to being a title sequence for a Bond movie that fits the Bond movie and fits what you're about to see and fits the song. So all in all, I thought it was a very good combination. Maybe lost a few points for being so obviously like, hey, guess what? You're going to see some African-American people in this movie. We want to make sure you know that up front. Like, as if they were trying to warn us or something like that was something that we needed to be warned about. It just got that kind of sense. But I'm like, why would we need to be warned about that? I don't understand why this even matters. But I liked it. I enjoyed it, and I almost, like I said, I almost felt like I shouldn't, but I did. Plus,
all right.
At the very beginning, boobs. They're covered in the important bits, but you see them.
So what do you have at number 8, sir?
Moving on to number 8 is one that I questioned your judgment a bit because you have talked about it. However, I understand your reasoning. It just so happens that my biggest reason for liking it was one of your biggest reasons for disliking it. My notes for this one say very cool oil effects because I dug it. I thought they did it really well. Obviously, it's a major plot point in the movie focusing on oil, even though we don't really see a lot of it in the actual film itself, but there is a plot point that involves oil, so it fits. And I thought the effects looked really cool. It might have even made it higher on my list if it wasn't for the song being kind of sleepy. And again, I don't want my Bond title sequences putting me to sleep. Luckily, the action made up for it more than enough. I thought it was a good mix. I liked the effects, and the oil didn't bother me nearly as much as it bothered you. I'm not a huge fan. Like, I wouldn't paint my wall that weird pearlescent oily color. It would look like somebody spilled oil on your walls, and I don't want that. But for the purposes of this title sequence, I enjoyed the oil. So number 8, The World Is Not Enough.
All right. I still question your judgment, but I also find it interesting. I think our placements, in terms of how far apart they are close to how far apart we were in the opposite direction about the song. But, all right. Like I said, for me, a lot of it is I hate that color. I just do.
I totally understand. That's why it's so interesting that same basic effect. I loved it. You hated it. And so obviously, since it's such a major part of that sequence, it's going to make a dramatic difference in our placements.
Indeed. And that's why we have 2 hosts.
Exactly.
Another example of that is what my number 8 is, which you really did not like at all. But I liked the opening sequence for You Only Live Twice.
Wow.
You had the volcanoes real and stylized. You also had the girls real and stylized. You had the drawn Japanese umbrellas, which I thought was a really cool effect. I really like how they did that. And how it wasn't just something that moved around. Sometimes the credits were written in the umbrella. I just like how they did that. And the silhouette geishas, wow, I don't think Maurice Binder ever found models with larger nipples than those ladies there. I mean, just...
Very possible. Yeah, I can understand all that, but for me, it was just, like my notes say, all volcano all the time. I got bored with the volcano very quickly, and it just distracted from everything else for me. So, but I understand your reasoning. I think this one, so far, is our biggest departure, number-wise. But, yeah, all right. I won't question your judgment severely, just moderately.
Fair enough. Now, for my number 007 spot... this one is almost perfectly fitting because this is where they finally got into their groove and hit what the prototypical James Bond opening title sequence was going to be. And of course, that is going to be for Thunderball, which is the first of the real classic Maurice Binder ones, where you have the silhouettes moving across the single color field, and so you have the silhouetted swimming girls, and it just fits the movie very well. It sets the tone for what the rest of these sequences are going to be like in the future, and it just fits, and it's just really well made. So my spot of honor for number 007 is Thunderball.
All right. And I only had that at 11, so it's not too far off, and I definitely understand your reasoning. Again, you gave a lot more credence to the artistic styling and the progression of that than I did. I went almost purely based on just my enjoyment of the title sequence and how I felt it fit with the film. So I think that explains a lot about our drastic differences in some cases. Other cases, it's kind of obvious. Like, the world is not enough. You hate the oil. I love the oil. So obviously those are going to be hugely different. Whereas with
Eric's a cabana boy.
What? Who do I get to rub the oil on? Because that makes a big difference. Is it who do I get to rub the oil on, or who do I have to rub the oil on? That makes all the difference in the world right there.
Pretty much, yeah.
So,
and who oils you up?
Well, mine... Not going to go there. Not going to go there. Where I will go is to my number 007 position, which is one that, again, we've already discussed. We have drastic differences in the likeness, in how much we like the song, and we also seem to have drastic difference in how much we actually like the title sequence itself outside of the song. Now, I will say that the song for me does not bother me nearly as much as it bothers you, as we discussed when we did the song episode. And in fact, this was the favorite of our resident music expert, Matthew Renfro. So for me, my number 007 spot goes to the Quantum of Solace title sequence. I really dug the sand effects. It did start to get kind of boring. About halfway through, I was like, okay, we've seen about the same thing. And then right about the time you're thinking, okay, that's enough sand, then we start getting a little bit more. It starts to get better. It's almost as if they knew, it's like, okay, here's the mark where we need to do something else. And that's where you started to see more. You saw the multiple bonds falling, and so you started to get that kind of sequence going again, and it brought me right back into it. So I really dug the title sequence for Quantum of Solace, so much so that it's all the way up at number 7.
I still kind of question your judgment, but all right, fine. So what do you have at number 6, sir?
For me, number 6 is another one that I was shocked ranked as lowly on your list as it did, because I thought for sure this would be somewhere near the top of your list. In fact, I was afraid almost that it was going to be something. I thought almost that at number 6 I had maybe placed it too low, that you were maybe going to question my judgment for the lowness of my placement. This one is one that I felt had a very cool effect. I thought, I love the song, and I love the fact that it really kind of shows the weapon in which the title of the movie is derived, and that is the man with the golden gun. I really dug this title sequence. It's one of the few older style ones that I really, really enjoyed. The song's fun. It fits, obviously, and I really dug the effects, the kind of water effect, as well as the obviously the gun itself being shown. Even though it may not be the actual golden gun, it was a golden gun, and in most cases it was at least very similarly shaped to the actual golden gun. I dug it. So, for me, 10 spots off of you at number 6, the man with the golden gun.
And, for me, at number 6, one that I was shocked at how low you had it placed, especially because I know the regard you have for the film, and I still can't understand why it's so far down for you, but hey, that's why we have 2 hosts. But for me, number 6 is For Your Eyes Only, which is the only time that we actually see the singer singing the song. And I really have no complaints about that because Sheena Easton looks like a Bond girl. And not only that, she's presented in Bond girl style because she's very obviously topless while she's singing it. Not just bare shoulder, but when you look at when there's certain angles, it's really obvious that she's covering herself up with her arms and that's it. And I'm not saying, hey, let's go for the peep show. I'm saying that this fits the artistic mold of these title sequences as we've been going along. And I think that she melded into that very, very well. I don't think it detracted from it at all. It's not something I'd want to see most of the time. But for one instance, I think it really worked. And I think it really clicked. And I think if you're going to do it with anyone, then doing it with Sheena Easton was a great choice. And then you also, of course, have the standard Maurice Binder imagery with the dancing and swimming and the nude or semi-nude images. But it just all really gelled very well for me. So number 6, For Your Eyes Only.
Okay. I completely understand your reasoning. Again, for me, it seemed like it was too much about the song, and maybe that was part of, Sheena Easton being in it. It just made it, like we discussed, these are basically music videos. However, that one seemed more music video and less Bond title sequence to me. And I think that's kind of what distracted for me. It didn't seem to fit the rest of the movie because here we are heavily featuring this person who's not in the movie. Most of the time we see silhouettes or something like that, or shapeless, faceless things that aren't going to be in the movie. But this was an actual person. Like, here's a face, but she's not in the movie, thankfully, because we know what happens when they actually put the singer of the song in the movie. It's not good.
Actually, Sheena Easton did not do very badly when she played Sonny Crockett's girlfriend on Miami Vice for a while.
I'm not talking about specifically in Bond movies, because there was another instance of...
I know you're talking about Madonna.
Gosh, why? Like, why did they... Okay, first of all, hey, we need a Bond movie title sequence. Who do we want to get the song? Madonna? Okay. No. Just no. Somebody should have rolled up a newspaper and bopped whoever said Madonna on the nose and said no. But no, they didn't. Somebody said, oh, yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. And then they said, hey, you know what would be even a better idea? Let's give her a part in the movie. At that point, a bigger newspaper should have been rolled up tightly, and they should have been whacked very hard across the head. But instead, somebody said, that's a good idea, too.
One or the other of those could be an entry in our holiday returns contest. You can't have both things, but you can have one or the other.
There you go. Leave Madonna in the movie, take her out of the song. Or leave the song, take Madonna out of the film. Either way. But, yeah. So, okay. So, number 6 for you, For Your Eyes Only. And I understand your reasoning. I won't question your judgment too much. I just didn't have the same feelings towards it as I did to the rest of the movie.
Fair enough. So then what do you have next, sir?
So for me, for number 5, is one that I honestly feared would be way, way down on your list, but surprisingly almost hit your top 10. And that is the theme, the title sequence, I should say, from Tomorrow Never Dies. I really enjoyed the cool X-ray graphics and the hacksaw effects, and it really fit the movie well. I thought there was only a very few brief moments where the CGI was painfully obvious. That was specifically when the form of the woman morphed out of the flat circuit board type and then started dancing around. It was like, ooh, if you just hadn't danced, it would have been fine. But the rest of the effects, like the morphing in and out of the circuit board shapes and the code shapes and everything else, I thought it was really cool, really fun effects. Almost made, the title sequence almost better than the movie, in fact, because it was fun, and the song wasn't too horrible, wasn't distracting. So, for me, number 5, Tomorrow Never Dies.
All right. For my number 5, one that you have already mentioned, and which made you feel a little dirty. Which, of course, must mean that I'm talking about Live and Let Die, which I thought is just a fantastic interpretation of the type of movie we're going to see, because we're about to watch a blaxploitation flick, and we're about to watch a blaxploitation flick based in voodoo. Plus, we have this awesome rock song behind it. And the first thing we start off with is not just an obviously nude woman, and no, actually her naughty bits were not covered up. Her nipples are visible, sir. But a African woman. And that is just shocking for a Bond film or any Hollywood film at all. Remember, the first interracial kiss on television had just happened a couple of years ago on Star Trek. when this movie came out. So that is just something shocking. And yet it's not there to shock. It's not there it's not there for the peep show. It's there for the artistic interpretation, and for what they're showing, it works. And I love the effect of going from the woman who's supposed to be there to tantalize you, and then in fact, boom, turns into a skull. That's the voodoo magic happening, saying, ooh, we lured you in and now you're damned.
Fire.
So and then of course you have the standard Maurice Binder type stuff where you have the dancing silhouettes and so on, and then naked white girl under folded hands. But it's just a really fabulous interpretation of the song and a fabulous interpretation of the style of movie we're about to watch. So I really enjoyed the Live and Let Die title sequence for my number 5.
All right. Like I said, it's in my top 10, and I can't disagree with anything you said. I thought it was very effective and very much fit the film. So I'm not going to question your judgment on that at all.
All right. Now for my number 4, you still wound me deeply, man. Because A View to a Kill's title sequence is so awesome. Dayglow girls, fired, ice, and skiing, and the ice girl melting. It's just awesome.
It's cool. I'm not disputing that it was cool. It was just way too 80s. Oh my gosh, it was like screaming 80s. And I mean, it was almost like a parody. It was almost like something I would expect to see now, made to look like it was 80s, like over the top 80s. That was my biggest concern. But that just means
that it's exactly exemplifying its era.
It's exactly the right amount of 80s. I don't know. It was just too much 80s for me, but I totally understand your love for it, and I'm not going to fault your judgment or really question your judgment. It distracted me. It was kind of like the trampoline people. It distracted me from what could have been great, but it was just too much 80s crammed into just a few minutes. It was like, whoa. It's like an entire 80s party just crammed into 2 minutes in my brain, and it hurt.
Well, for me, I loved it. So, number 4, A View to a Kill. What do you have at number 4, sir?
For my number 4 is one that thankfully you have not mentioned yet, which means at least it's in your top 3.
Which also breaks my prediction that our top 3 would be the same, just in a different order.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We could still possibly have the top couple of spots be the same, but I guarantee our top 3 won't be the same because your number 3, or my number 3, you mentioned a long time ago. But for me, number 4 is one that I feel you may be surprised is as low as number 4 on my list, because it's definitely one of my all-time favorite movies, and I really, really enjoyed this title sequence. There were just a few moments where the title sequence got just weird enough to take me out of it for a moment, and again, that's where I kind of dock points. When I see something so just odd, then I'm like, wait, what? Why is that there? So I thought this one had obviously fantastic graphics. This was several years later than the film prior to it. It was almost not necessarily a reboot, but a reemergence of the franchise. It was new, it was shiny, and I thought they did everything right with this title sequence except for the parts that just got too weird, and that is the title sequence from GoldenEye. Great song, great graphics. I love the Soviet iconography kind of falling and getting that effect. But then you've got the weird stuff like the two-faced lady who smokes a cigarette with one face and then a gun comes out of her mouth on the other side. It's like, wait,
don't you?
What?
You didn't get that?
Yeah, smoking kills, I know, but...
No! The name of the villain, Janus,
okay,
for whom we have the month of January named. He was a god with 2 faces.
Did he smoke with one and have a gun come out of his other mouth? Because I never saw that in Batman and Two-Face. He never did that. It was just that, some of those weird bits, and there were other ones in there, too, that were just wait, what? The rest of it was awesome. I loved it. I love this movie. I have a very deep love for this movie in my heart, and I love the title sequence. I love the song. The song is fantastic. But there's just enough weird stuff to bring it down just a couple of spots. And again, these ones are really, really close. When you get into my top 5, they are right stacked on top of each other. I have to pick at nits to find any reason to rank these, basically. So because there's just some weird stuff that just kind of gets me twitching a little bit, that's why it's as far down as number 4, and I knew that would probably surprise you, but GoldenEye is number 4 for me.
It completely shocks me, actually. So what do you have at number 3?
Number 3 is the one for which I knew you were going to severely question my judgment when I did my list, but I also know you dislike it for almost the same exact reasons that I like it. And for me, yes, there were some bits that were a little too CGI, but that's kind of a sign of the times as well. But I really, really liked the fact that they actually attempted to put some of the story into the title sequence. And while it may not have been the best ever, I really dug it. And in fact, for me, the title sequence is probably the best part of the entire movie. And that, for me, is Die Another Day. I know you're shaking your head at me right now, but...
No, actually, I'm face-palming.
I love the fact that it tells a story. I liked the effects. I liked the, yes, it was kind of cheesy, but it was kind of fitting for the time. Like, if they redid it right now, it would be way better. But I liked the scorpions, minus the fact that they were using black scorpions when, whatever. Anyways. But I like the fact that they were trying to tell part of the story without just showing it, because if they just showed it, then it wouldn't be a title sequence. It would just be part of the movie with titles on it. The fact that they still did the stylized stuff. I do have in my notes, too bad about the song, because, oh god, that song, so bad. So bad. And this one could have, with a good song that didn't hurt my ears, this could have easily been at the top of my list, or in the second spot. But even with that horrible song, I still liked it. I just enjoy that so much. Like, that's the only part of the movie I really do enjoy. Die Another Day makes my number 3. I'm sorry.
GoldenEye does not accept your apology. And...
If you want to send me hate mail regarding my number 3 choice on this list, you can reach me at eric@foureyedradio.com, or you can tweet me at ericjdewey, or visit our Facebook page and leave me a message, facebook.com/Her Majesty's Pod. All of those ways you can get a hold of me and tell me how much I stink for choosing Die Another Day at my number 3 spot on the title sequence list.
And if you agree with me, or if you don't, you can email me directly at ziggy@cinemaontherocks.com. You can find me on Twitter at cinemaotr, where I will still be looking at Eric and questioning his judgment. And as far as the best part of the movie, Rosamund Pike does not accept your apology.
All right, fair enough. So then, I know now, looking at my list and seeing what I've ticked off here, what your top 3 are. I do not know in what order they appear. So what is your number 3?
My number 3 is a title sequence I absolutely love, and I actually understand the interpretive symbolism of it, and therefore I did not question the part about the cigar or the gun coming out of the mouth. But obviously, therefore, we're talking about GoldenEye. As someone who really is very interested in Cold War iconography and imagery and the fall of the Soviet Union and how that can integrate into the James Bond universe, I really, really loved this opening sequence. I remember when I first saw it, because I went to GoldenEye at a local premiere event that was hosted by the studio, and everyone was cheering at the stunt sequence that ends the pre-title sequence, and then I still felt like keeping on cheering when I saw this title sequence come on, because I just love all of the iconography they're using. And I just thought it was really well done. Do I miss Maurice Binder nudes? Of course. But just all the rich symbolism here. The only reason that this isn't in the top 2 is because the top 2 have more Bondinessocity in terms of Bond in the story. But this, in almost any other universe, could have easily been a number 1 pick. It's just an awesome opening credit sequence.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree. It's a fantastic sequence. I absolutely love it, as I do the entire movie, even the cheesy bits. So can't fault your judgment there, and it's only 1 spot off me. It's not as bad as my number 3 pick to yours, but So that leaves us only with the top 2 spots, both of which we obviously have the same 2 as our top 2. I wonder if we place them in the same order or not, though.
Do you think we did or not?
Based on conversations we've had previously, I think maybe. Is that wishy-washy enough for you?
Yes, it is.
If I were going to bet on it, I would put no more than $5 on yes. But I wouldn't put any money on no.
I wouldn't put any money on it, but if I were forced to bet a chicken sandwich...
Oh, but not a hate chicken. Not a hate chicken sandwich.
Not chicken of hate. No, chicken from someplace that treats all people equally.
There you go.
So if I were to bet a chicken sandwich from a restaurant that treats all people equally, I would bet that we did not agree.
Oh, okay. So we have a bit of a conundrum here. So how do we want to do this? Do you want to reveal number 1 first and then go to number 2?
Might as well do that.
Okay. You want to go?
All right. For me, there were 2 really obvious spots on this list. The first and dead last. And we've already talked about dead last. And for me, the number 1 on this list is actually one of my favorite opening credit sequences of any movie ever of all time. And certainly, to me, has to be the number 1 opening credit sequence of the James Bond series. And I am talking about Casino Royale.
Damn it, I owe you a chicken sandwich.
I love the fact that they went back to animation, even though you have and what's especially cool is you have a photorealistic Daniel Craig, and especially the piercing blue eyes. And yet you have him walking into this fully animated casino sequence, and you have the cards, including a deceptive queen that looks like Eva Green, and you have the roulette wheels, and you have diamonds being thrown like sharp daggers. You have these fantastically choreographed fights between these animated card characters, and then you have Daniel Craig walking through it all, and just in the background, you still have the part of the story playing where 007 status is granted to James Bond during the title sequence. So it's just awesome. I can't think of a single thing wrong with this. This is one of those I could watch over and over again because it's also one of the songs I love. But just in terms of wonderful artistic interpretation of the story you're about to see, having a small part of the story in and of itself, and just also being a wonderful interpretation of the song that's playing. It's the total package. For me, number 1 is Casino Royale.
Well, I can't fault your judgment because I did have that at number 2. I will say that my number 1 and number 2 were so close that, again, I really had to pick at nits to find a reason to rank them, to not have them tied, because I didn't want to tie. So my only nitpick was one of the things that you actually pointed out as being a plus for you. So it kind of makes sense that it would bring it down for me but up for you. When the target is floating around and it goes over the face of the queen and it changes to essentially a photorealistic drawing or animation of Eva Green. I didn't like that part. That part bugged me. That took me out of the moment just briefly, just enough to bring it down to number 2. But other than that, I absolutely agree with everything you said. I love that sequence. I love the effects. I love the fact that he's like loading spades into the magazine of the gun, and then when he shoots the guy with the spade bullet, he shatters into 1 billion hearts. All the graphics with the card suits and everything is just so fantastic. You see the clubs and the spades and the diamonds and the hearts and everything being used. I like that he's fighting with the one guy and he punches his face and his face kind of morphs into a bunch of diamonds for just a moment and then comes back. And it's fantastic imagery. It's really, really, really well done. It's a great song to listen to. I've used this song as my alarm ringtone for quite some time. It definitely has the total package, as does my choice for number 1. It's just that one brief moment where it just kind of was like, wait, why did they do that? Like, I get it, but at the same time, that is almost giving too much away. Like, looking back, like, it didn't give anything away when I was watching it the first time. I didn't think, automatically, I mean, granted, I read the book by the time the movie came out, but I didn't catch that the first time through. But rewatching it, I was kind of like, don't like that one tiny little bit. So that's the nit I chose to pick and brought it down to number 2 from number 1.
So that must mean your number 1 is?
Skyfall. Oh man, this is a great opening sequence. Just fantastic. You've got a great song. You've got fantastic graphics. You see Bond, falling into the water and falling down and then getting pulled down by the giant hand. You see all of this fantastic imagery, and then as the song tone changes, the tone of the imagery changes right along with it. It's so perfect. It is, for me, the best combination of music video for the song along with being a Bond title sequence. It is just, for me, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. I was looking, trying to, when I'm trying to rank these and they get up to the top where I'm really, really close, I'm like, okay, I got to find something I don't like about this. Nope, couldn't find anything. Loved it from start to finish. It's just fantastic.
If you watch the behind the scenes on this, it actually took just as long to produce the opening title sequence as it did the rest of the movie.
So they put the work in. All right.
Yeah, for me, it is another fantastic interpretive piece. It's really obvious what the symbolism is. It is basically it's a continuation of the narrative of the story as you've been watching it. It's James Bond's dream of dying while he's unconscious in the water, and he's going back through exactly, how he got to where he was and who he is, or who he might think he is, and whether or not he is coming back. For me, the nit that I picked is it. Even though I love the song and could listen to the song over and over again, in fact, I have been known to put the song on repeat for about an hour. But when watching the title sequence, the point drags just a little bit too much right around the House of Mirrors for me. And it's not bad. It's just the little nit I had to pick, and I could find no flaws in Casino Royale. So overall, there's almost nothing stopping this one from being a number one, except for the fact that Casino Royale is just so awesome. So that's why it's my number 2.
All right. So it's official. We have a list in which no matches. The closest we had was our 20 and 19 spot.
This is the first time that's ever happened, as I recall.
We almost always have at least one match. It's usually either the top or the bottom, and every now and then it's just a random one in the middle, like, number 17 happens to be the same. In this case, the closest we ever came was our 20 and 19, and then we did somehow flip-flop 13 and 21, which is quite a bit apart, but it's kind of interesting when I see that just happened to flip-flop. Moonraker and License to Kill just kind of filled those 2 spots. But yeah, when we're talking about the best of the best, for me, those 2 are just fantastic. And, having to rank them, and if I watched them, another 5 times each, I might find something to nitpick at Skyfall about and bring it down just below Casino Royale. Or I might, bring it down, it might flip-flop again. Who knows? But I think it's a very solid 1-2 punch right there. Those two movies, fantastic title sequences. Just the graphics, the effects, the music, everything about them, stellar.
I definitely agree. So outside of the Bond series, are there any movies that you've seen recently where you thought the title sequence really stood out? Or
can't really say that I have, because honestly, I don't get out to see new movies very often, so I don't think I've seen a movie in the theaters since Guardians of the Galaxy, actually. That was the last movie I saw in the theaters, and I actually made a special trip to go see that because everybody was telling me how great it was. I'm like, okay, I got to check this out, and I was not disappointed. It was a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, seriously. But no, nothing sticks out dramatically for me. Is there something that has come out recently or that you've seen recently that sticks out for you?
The one that sticks out for me the most, and it actually ended up being one of the best parts of the movie because I found the movie overall to be a great disappointment. That was the opening credits sequence for Godzilla.
Godzilla.
And the reason that it played out very well for me is that while the credits are rolling, they're rolling over what looks like old footage and old newspaper clippings. Mm-hmm. And you get to read the newspaper clippings just long enough to realize what they say before they're being blacked out by a marker. Because the idea that you're supposed to be getting as you're watching this opening sequence is that the government has known about Godzilla and the creatures like him since the 1950s, and that a lot of the atomic testing, quote unquote, that had been happening in the Pacific during the 50s, 60s was actually trying to kill Godzilla. And I just thought that was a very, very clever way of showing that, and unfortunately it was the most clever part about the whole story.
Yeah, I agree. I did actually watch Godzilla, not really recently, but basically a little while back, and I was I wouldn't say I was disappointed because I was kind of forewarned. A lot of people said, even people I know, like our own Stephen Mooney over on Socially Awkward Studios, he is a huge Godzilla fan, big fan of the franchise, and he even said he was disappointed in that film. He said it wasn't as bad as the predecessor to it.
It'd be really hard to be that bad.
It really would, wouldn't it? But even he said he was disappointed in the film, and so I wasn't expecting too much, and I kind of watched it, while I was doing other things and wasn't paying too much attention to it, and it was enjoyable enough. But yeah, I agree. It was the title sequence was probably one of the better parts of the film.
Basically, for whatever parts you missed, anytime a human being talked, except when the Japanese scientist, played by Ken Watanabe, said, "Let them fight," none of it mattered. Not a single thing that a human being did mattered. And if you think you missed the scenes where they stomped cities, nope, they never showed up on camera. You saw the monsters walking into the city, about to stomp it. It would cut away, and then when it was cut back, the city was already destroyed.
The best part of a Godzilla movie. That was really the only thing that I kind of did like, was the fact that in the end, that I actually kind of took that as a positive, because my thought on it was like, okay, well, in the end, you find out that really nothing that people tried to do had any effect on the outcome. It still ended up being just the monsters battling it out, and then Godzilla's like, all right, peace out. See you later. Spoiler alert, sorry. We spoil movies here. Usually just Bond movies, but yeah, so.
And the thing is, I didn't even hold it against Godzilla that he very obviously, because I know the geography of the city, destroyed my favorite hotel.
Oh.
He was actually standing on it.
Oh.
And fortunately, it was just a movie, because I'll be there shortly. But yeah, it was, as a streamer or as a free rental, go for it, but it definitely wasn't worth paying for.
Yeah, definitely not a purchase one. Not something you have to have on DVD or Blu-ray or anything like that. But no. Maybe worth a watch once if you don't have anything else going on.
Indeed. So, any other thoughts on title sequences?
No, just I like them, and I wish more movies did them. I think there are definitely some movies that don't need them, and I'm totally fine with that when a movie just piles on the action right up front, and then maybe throw a splash screen with the title, and then boom, right back into the action. I'm okay with that as long as I'm not distracted. If you have a bunch of boring crap, then splash the title at me and then give me a bunch more boring crap, and then I'm going to be upset. I'm like, you couldn't have at least broken that up with a title sequence? You couldn't have given me something? But I think that it works best when it flows well, and I think the Bond formula works well. I think that I like the fact that they have the opening scene, they have a little bit of action, a little bit of drama, a little bit of suspense, then a title sequence that hopefully ties in enough with the film to not give anything away, but to not feel like you're leaving the film for a moment, and then tie it right back into the opening act of the actual film. And I like that model. But I'm not necessarily eager to see other franchises try and copy it straight up either. Like, that is a Bond thing, and I like to keep it Bond. I don't care if other movies try something similar, but don't straight up copy it or I'm going to be upset.
Fair enough, though, of course, at the beginning, it was just what every movie did. It's just that Bond continued after everybody stopped.
Yeah. So now Bond owns it now. They're like, okay, you guys left. You saw that, right? Everybody saw they left. I'm still here. Eminent domain or anything, something like that. I don't know. It's ours now.
But that's going to do it then for our discussion of the opening credit sequences of the James Bond 007 films. Yep. Hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and we also hope that you will enter our holiday returns contest.
So you win some stuff.
Indeed. You have until the end of the day in your own time zone of November 27th, 2014. So the end of the day, American Thanksgiving. Go to hermajestyspod.com/contest for rules and the entry form.
Absolutely, yeah. And don't forget, you can always contact us directly on our Facebook page or our Twitter page or on our website. You can comment on the individual postings. We're more than happy to read what you guys have to say, and we want to hear from you. We want to know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, how you feel about our rankings when we do these list episodes and things like that. We were not afraid to engage with our audience. We want to talk to you guys. We want to know what you think as well, because Bond universe is too big for just two people. Come on, we need the rest of you out there to help us out. Give us your opinions too.
Indeed. But for now, that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back again in less than 2 weeks with another episode of Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, wherein we're going to look at some more of the films of Sean Connery.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed.
But in the meantime, I'm Ziggy Berkeley.
And I'm Eric Dewey.
And you have been listening to Her Majesty's Secret Podcast, only on the Four-Eyed Radio Network.
This has been another great presentation by the Four-Eyed Radio Network. You can find more information at foureyedradio.com.